Imagine walking into a grocery store with a cow, not a picture of a cow, a real, confused, lowing cow, and you want to trade it for a week of groceries. Sounds absurd, right? But for most of human history, that was basically how shopping worked. The thing in your wallet right now, those rectangles of paper and discs of metal, only works because a total stranger agrees they are worth something. And that agreement, that strange shared story, is the oldest trick our species ever pulled off. This is the story of the first currency and how ancient humans invented money. Part 1. The problem before money. Before money, there was barter. You have chickens. Your neighbor has a cow. You want the cow. So you need to find a moment when your neighbor specifically wants chickens and wants exactly the number you are willing to give. Economists call this the double coincidence of wants, which is a fancy way of saying, good luck. Try paying a dentist in potatoes. Try buying a house with a herd of goats. The math of barter gets impossible the second a society grows past a handful of people. But humans are clever, and what we did next was sneakily brilliant. We stopped trading things for other things and started trading things for a story. We picked objects that everyone already agreed were valuable, and we used those as a language in between. The first markets were probably just a village square where someone with too many fish met someone with too many baskets, and both walked away happy. That is all money ever is, an object everyone agrees to pretend is worth something so the rest of the trade can happen. Part 2. The first money was food. The very first currencies were not coins, they were dinner. In the early farming villages of Mesopotamia, your wealth was measured in grain. The word we still use, shekel, began as a weight of barley. Temples became the first banks, storing grain and lending it out, and workers were literally paid in beer. Clay tablets from ancient Sumer show laborers receiving daily rations of barley and beer. The world's oldest written recipe, in fact, is for beer. So the next time someone says they work for a beer, they are quoting 6,000 years of human tradition. Then came cattle. In many early societies, your fortune was counted in heads of livestock because a cow was food, clothing, and plow all in one. This left fingerprints all over our language. The Latin word for property, pecunia, comes from pecus, meaning cattle. The Old English word for wealth, fee, is where we get the word fee. And capital, your capital, comes from the Latin word for head, as in, head of cattle. So when a banker talks about your capital, they are, technically, counting your cows. Livestock was the original stock market. When traders today quote livestock, they are quoting the first exchange in history. And salt. Roman soldiers were partly paid in salt, which is where we get the word salary. If you were a good soldier, you were worth your salt. If you are paid a salary today, congratulations, you are a salt employee. People used salt as money from Ethiopia to Tibet because everybody needs it and it keeps. So what did people actually buy with this food money? Everything you would expect and some things you would not. Land, livestock, tools, a bride in what we now politely call a bride price, a slave, a night of entertainment. In the ancient world, money and life were the same ledger. Part 3. The Weird Money Hall of Fame. Once humans got the hang of money, we got creative and the results are wonderful. Take the cowry shell. For thousands of years, these small glossy shells were money across Africa, Asia, and the islands of the Pacific. The Chinese character for money and for value is literally a picture of a shell. In parts of Africa, cowry shells were still used well into the 20th century. And in early colonial New England, iron nails were so valuable they became a kind of money, and stealing nails from a neighbor's barn was a serious crime, because you were, in effect, robbing their bank. In North America, the Haudenosaunee, often called the Iroquois, used wampum, tiny beads carved from clamshells, woven into belts that recorded treaties and histories. European colonists liked them so much they made wampum legal tender in several colonies. Imagine paying your taxes in a beaded bracelet. Colonial America also ran on tobacco. In Virginia and Maryland, your rent, your taxes, even your salary could arrive as leaves, because the crop was steady and everybody wanted it. And in prisoner of war camps centuries later, cigarettes became the default currency because they were scarce, portable, and universally desired. Humans will turn almost anything into money as long as everyone wants it. The Aztecs used cacao beans as money. You could buy a rabbit for a handful of beans, a slave for 100. The emperor's treasury held cacao by the boatload. And here is the part I love. People counterfeited cacao beans. They would hollow out a real bean and stuff it with dirt, then spend it. That is the original crypto scam, and it is about 1,000 years old. In Fiji, your wealth could be a whale tooth. In parts of Africa, iron rods. And on the island of Yap in the Pacific, money was giant stone wheels called rai, some as wide as a car. Here is the beautiful part. Some of the largest stones were so heavy they were left exactly where they landed or lost at sea, and everybody just agreed they were still owned by someone. One famous stone fell off a ship, sank, and became more valuable because of the story of the men who died moving it. On Yap, you could be a millionaire and never touch your money because the money was the story, not the rock. Part 4. Why metal won? All of these things had problems. Cows eat. Grain rots. Shells are heavy by the bagful. Salt clumps and dissolves. Humans needed something durable, divisible, and portable, and we found it in metal. About 2,600 years ago, in a place called Lydia, in what is now Turkey, someone stamped a standard weight of electrum, a natural mix of gold and silver, with a mark guaranteeing its value. That was the first coin. The mark was a promise from the ruler. This weight is real. Counterfeiting became the world's first white-collar crime, and rulers punished it with a creativity usually reserved for treason. Suddenly, value fit in your pocket, and you could make change. Meanwhile, in China, people had been using real cowrie shells as money, and then they started casting little bronze copies of those shells. That is how serious they were about the shell. Those bronze shells became the first metal coins. Across the world, silver and gold won out because they are rare, they do not rust, and they are easy to carry, which is why your jewelry and your money have always been made of the same few metals. Part 5. The paper turn and the real trick. We should mention paper because it shows the trick perfectly. Around 1,000 years ago, in China, merchants got tired of hauling heavy coins, so they used paper notes promising the coins were in a warehouse somewhere. The note was not valuable. The promise was, look at the whole family tree of money, and it is the same idea in different costumes. Commodity money, like grain and shells, metal money, like coins, paper money, like those notes, and now digital money, like the number in your bank app. And that is the whole secret of money, all the way to today. Because think about what you buy now. You still buy food, shelter, tools, and status. You still trade your time for a symbol, and then trade that symbol for the things you want. The only difference is that today the symbol is a number on a screen, backed by a promise from a government, instead of a cowrie shell or a carved stone. We did not stop using weird money. We just made the weirdest money of all, invisible money. Part 6. Where that leaves us. So back to that cow at the grocery store. You cannot pay with a cow, but you can pay with a card, which is just a fast way of telling a story to a machine. And that story is the same story your ancestor told when he handed over a grain of barley, a salt brick, a shell, or a stone he had never even touched. Money was never really the object. It was always the agreement. And the fact that total strangers can trust a rectangle of paper or a number enough to feed you is maybe the most ancient and most improbable magic trick our species ever invented. The next time you spend a coin, remember, you are not holding money. You are holding 6,000 years of everyone agreeing, just this once, to believe the same story.